I've seen posts and stories on this website before about encountering red lights. I seriously thought people were just bullshitting and making up stories for attention. But I saw something last night while I was on the road, and I don't think I will be ever able to forget. I was driving home pretty late at night, down a pretty rural highway near my town. The town I live in is kinda small, so it's pretty rare to see other cars passing by, especially since it was around midnight when I was driving. I was actually in a bit of a rush, as I had gotten delayed earlier in the day and needed to wake up early morning for an important appointment. Just some BS with my doctor for some health problems. Nothing mental, just some muscle injury stuff. I was driving for a pretty long time, and I was pretty tired as it had been a long day. I was on autopilot, as you kind of do when you drive on roads like this. The scenery just starts to blend together, and because there is nothing in front of you, sometimes you just daydream for a while, and then you come to, and you realize that you have been daydreaming, and you're like, holy crap, anything could have just happened. Well, this kind of happened to me. Except when I snapped out of my daydream, the worst possible thing that could have happened to me took place. I hit someone. I don't even know where he came from or how. There were no cars anywhere on the road. I should have seen this guy approach. The area I was driving, it does wind a little, and there are trees and some foresty areas nearby, but I was blasting my big ass high beams for most of the time. Yes, I am that asshole, and they are so bright that they essentially make it daytime almost. That's how bright they are. There is no way I would not have seen him running. There was no way he could have concealed himself in any kind of darkness. But I was driving, and he just jumped out in front of my car and ended up on top of my hood. I shit my pants and slammed down on the brakes as hard as I could, and he went flying and skidded on the asphalt. It looked really painful. I was freaking out so hard. I started fumbling with my seatbelt to undo it because I thought I had just killed the guy. I was so sure I was going to jail. It took me a while because the adrenaline in my body was overwhelming and my brain just forgot how seatbelts worked, I guess. I also had my doors locked, so it was taking time for me to slow down and breathe and just think. I didn't even manage to get out of my vehicle. I had only gotten my belt off when I saw some movement at the top of my vision, and I quickly looked back up and out the front of my car. This man had gone back up. When I saw this, I breathed such a sigh of relief, knowing he wasn't dead. I could see this man very clearly because of my high beams. He was standing at probably around 6 feet tall, but when he moved, he was hunching forward and was craning his neck down. He looked to be in a lot of pain because I could see him wincing, I think, and tensing and struggling with his movements. He seemed pretty badly injured and could barely keep himself upright. He wasn't wearing a shirt. He's barefoot. His feet look red raw, and they have like a ton of cuts and calluses on them. I think they were actually bleeding, which means he must have been running or walking for a while, I guess. He had these cuts and bruises and scratches all over his body that no way could he have gotten them from my car from that one impact. I'm talking about something that looks like literal slashes down his chest, but faint, maybe like you would get from the claws of a cat. He has pants on, just a pair of regular old jeans. I have no idea what kind. I wouldn't really know. They were a little scuffed and a little bit dirty. This combination of factors immediately makes my mind go to tweaker or homeless person or both. And I think this is just some drug-addled guy chasing me down to rob me, maybe. When he got up off the floor and was crouched over, he looked groggy and like he wasn't really there. I could see him swaying slightly around in a circle, like he was drunk and off balance. He was squinting his eyes and just staring forward in some kind of a daze. And then all of a sudden, his expression just snaps back to reality, and it's like he has this look of realization, like he has only just now realized where he is and what he was doing. And then he looks me dead in the eyes, and I watch his expression go from dazed to shock to panic. As he has this panic look on his face, he is just staring me down and has started putting his arms right up into the air. He is waving them back and forth like a maniac, but he is not moving forward towards the car. I could hear him start shouting through the windshield. I had my window open a tiny crack just to let some air in, which kinda helped. He told me, "Hey, I need a ride. Please. Oh God, they're after me." He said this all while waving his arms up and down in the air. I'm freaking out. I have no idea what he's talking about. If someone was chasing him down, then I didn't want to end up getting shot. I thought maybe he was running from a dealer that he owed money to, and I was not getting in the middle of this. I started my engine up lightning quick, and I was ready to just drive off. I was ready to drive through this guy. I was revving it really hard to basically tell him to get out of the way, and I started inching forward. This guy, tweaker, whatever, he started backing up really slowly, but while waving his arms, and he kept shouting and begging for me to give him a ride. He told me he would do anything and that he would give me money, that I could just drop him off at a police station or a hospital and he would be gone forever. I was not listening. It had to be some kind of trick. I just kept revving and I shouted out of my window. I told him he better move or I would run him down again. I told him I was being serious and that I knew that he was going to rob me. He started backing up a little bit faster, but he was still begging, and he still would not clear fully out of my way. He backed up enough distance so I wouldn't immediately hit him, but he would not move to the side, so I could not drive forward. I couldn't exactly just go around because my car would end up in the grass and the forest and it might get stuck. And believe me, I did not want to get stuck in a situation like this. So I could not really move without hitting this guy again. I began revving my engine even more aggressively than before. I was psyching myself up to just go. And out of nowhere, I just heard this click, this really loud click. More like a clunk, maybe, than a click. By this point, I had dimmed my high beams and was just using my regular lights, so not everything was lit up anymore. So I was speechless when, all of a sudden, it was like a spotlight had been turned on from overhead. It wasn't hitting me or my car. It was just directly over this man. It's like one of those stereotypical ones that you would see in movies about prison escapes, or ones that helicopters would shine down to spot criminals. Just that big spotlight circle. Just one of those big police ones, except the light is red. It's this entirely red spotlight just completely covering this guy. And when this red light hit him, this guy, he just started screaming in agony. Like the most horrifying screams that I didn't think could even come from a person. While he is screaming, it looks like he's trying to cover his eyes with his hands. I can see them shaking a lot, and it looks like he's struggling to keep his hands over his eyes. I can still hear him calling for help, asking me to let him in the car, but I am just glued to the spot. I don't want to hit him. I don't want to drive into this light, so I just sit there like an idiot, watching all of this unfold. I watched as this man went from standing and covering his eyes to eventually falling down to his knees, but the whole way down it looked like a struggle, as if he was fighting against gravity to stay upright. But he was trembling so much, and he was eventually forced down. And by the end of it, he was flat on the floor, still struggling and trying to keep his head raised off of the floor, but he could not hold it for very long. Again, I was much too scared to get out of my car and try anything. Half of me thought this was a crazy tweaker, and half of me felt some deep primal response telling me that something was seriously wrong. After this guy's head had hit the ground, he'd been laying on the asphalt for maybe 10 to 20 seconds max, and I started to see his body move on the ground ever so slightly. He was laying belly down. In his back, it started to raise into the air ever so slightly, like he was picked up and lifted just by that one part of his back. His back is raised into the air at an angle, jutting out. He is curved as his back is lifted into the air, and as it keeps going up, it almost looks as if he's starting to float. I mean, I don't know if he was fully off the ground, but I couldn't really tell. It kind of looked like it. It could have just been a trick of the light, but it looked like none of his body was touching the ground anymore. But he was still in that position, back raised into the air, the rest of his body lower. It was like something with a lot of strength had picked him up by his t-shirt and was dangling him, if that makes sense, even though he wasn't wearing a t-shirt. And that's just the best way I can describe it. The second that I see that he has started to float off of the ground, boom, all of a sudden, it's just like a slingshot. I saw the man's body jerk up into the air at an insane speed, so fast that my eyes could barely comprehend. And I can't see him anymore. He flew out of my vision upward. Once the man left my sight, I heard another click-clunk sound, and the red light had just vanished, like a spotlight had been turned back off. I wasn't even hesitant anymore. I just jumped right out of my car and tried to look upwards. But I could not see anything. I couldn't see a trace of the man or even anywhere that the red light could have possibly come from. I spent a few minutes just sitting in my car and trying to compose myself. After that, I just drove home very slowly. I was scared I was going to hit someone again. I'm here posting on this website because I don't have any other options. I've never seen something like that before. What was that damn red light? What does it mean? Someone on this website has to know. They have to know what it is and what it means. I mean, I've seen people post stories about encountering these red lights before. I mean, some of them just sound like bullshit, but some of them, they sound real. And I need an answer, because I start shivering every single time I think about it. So, in my school we had a senior skip day. It was tradition. Every year we would go down to the local water park, and we would see if we could beat the previous year's high score. We would go down one of the covered water slides, and one person would plug it up, and we would see how many of our other high school class could fill up the slide. The lifeguard on duty was another student, having taken the day off from school to allow it. It was tradition. The previous year, we had managed a commendable 56 kids. It was hard, to be sure. It was difficult to keep count before the weight just forced everyone through. We were going to blow that record away. That's what I was told. We were going to reach 70. It was a great sunny day, and we were all prepared and excited. We let the guy on the football team line up first. Their strength and weight would be capable of holding up the line. Then we went through, one by one, cramming into the small space. I was near the middle. It was a fun slide, until I slammed up against a body right in front of me. It was painful for me, my heels digging into his back, and I could only imagine what it was like for him, until the next forced their way into me. My legs went underneath his arms, my feet against a person two in front of him, and I braced myself with my arms against the slide, the water coolly rushing between us. I sat there, crammed between two people, my arms tired, trying not to become pressed against the person in front of me. I remember his skin, slick and tan, with water pouring past us both of our mouths locked in a smile, enjoying our little prank. I must have been there for 5 or 10 minutes, the atmosphere becoming hot, with the heat of the bodies all shoved into that tiny, confined space, forcing the water to go up to our chins. At one point the laughter had just turned to panic. I could hear a girl scream first, and then a crack like thunder from behind us. Screams started to turn into yells, which turned into panic. Then we could all feel it. Our weight was too much, and the slide began to slump. One of the pillars holding up the slide had broken away, and the slide leaned violently near the middle. I began to scream with the rest of them. My body was forced into a cramped, fetal position, nearly drowning in the rushing water, my cheek against someone's back, as people just forced and fought their way through. I could hear cries out, begging us to let go, but we were trapped. Then, hardly able to breathe, caused either by the weight forced onto me or the water rising up into my eyes, I could feel it. A section had collapsed, the one directly behind me. It leaned down and fell forward, unloading the other children to the concrete walkway 3 stories below us. It forced ours backwards, and we lifted up. My hands braced. I could feel the person behind me grab my waist, keeping him from falling. Screams and cries for help rained out from behind us. They kept changing. Different pitches from the boys and the girls as we each fell through. No one to hold them back. The water forcing them through the open tunnel towards the concrete below. Then we were released. The person in front of me started moving forward. Our section teetered on its axis, bending backwards and then forwards. It overcompensated, and a sharp lip was formed where it didn't quite line up with the section in front of it. I slid over it with my bare back, taking with it a long swath of skin. I laid in the pool where the slide let us out, blood filling the pool from the sharp edge that took a piece of my back. There were dozens of us, crying, screaming, or in shock. 9 kids died that day. Another 17 went to the hospital. I still have a white scar that crosses my back like a bolt of lightning. I still have trouble in confined spaces, and whenever I take a shower and let the water run down my face, it just makes me panic. Hey there, X. So, I've been a lifeguard for the past 4 years. Seasonal, pools only. I have a couple freaky stories that you guys might enjoy. So, this was in my first year as a guard at an apartment complex. It's fondly referred to as Crummy Creek. I work from around 12:30 p.m. to 8:30. The pool is surrounded by trees on the back and left side. There's a parking lot in the front. There's a small pool house, which is basically just bathrooms and a pump room. All of the doors lead directly outside to the pool deck. I'm required to padlock the pump room and the gate every single night. I come in multiple days and the padlock is on the ground. The big pump room double doors are completely open and liquid chlorine is just absolutely everywhere. I have no idea how someone managed to just break the padlock off. Anyway, so at the same pool, the women's bathroom has a vent at the bottom of the wall, looking out over the tree line. I can hear scratching and heavy breathing from just outside of it, which freaks me out. This one is also still at the same pool. The apartment management is doing maintenance on the pump house roof. One of the contractors finds massive claw marks on the gutters directly behind my guard chair, like someone was gripping them. So fast forward to my second year as a guard. I'm just bouncing between different pools. I get sent back to Crummy Creek. My supervisor shows up. He informs me to call him if the police show up. My face went. A body was found behind the fenced-in pool area, just a couple of feet away from the stream. I have worked at 7 different pools, and honestly, when I took the job, I did not expect some of this stuff. It's a pool. No one ever tells ghost stories about pools. So, on to the next. I get pulled from my regular pool to cover one up in Drexel Pick related. There are large apartment buildings. It's mostly just elderly people. The pool is absolute shit. It's built into a hill, like 99% of everything in Pennsylvania. It's basically a concrete rectangular prism with a hole in the middle. The pump room is underneath the deck. Now, let me elaborate on that real quick. When I say it's under the deck, I mean since the actual pool walls drop down into the rectangle, it created a corridor that surrounds it beneath the pool deck. A dark, gross, puddle-filled, dirt floor corridor. Walking in, you are immediately faced with an iron gate, barring off one section of the corridor, full of all sorts of junk. To the left is the creepiest bathroom stall in the world. A big hole in the ground, covered with a piece of wood, and then the filter/chlorinator. The chlorinator is electronic. You set the rate of flow with a button, and it regulates the chlorine input. I come in, I set it to 3. I go back up onto the deck to start cleaning. I test the chemicals about an hour later. The chlorine reads a big fat 0. I go back down. I look at the machine. The rate is turned back down to 0. This goes on for about a week. Supervisor finally agrees to switch it out for a manual dial. I come in. I tune it to free. I check the cams an hour later. Same story. Reading a flat 0. I go down. Dial turned back down to 0. I turn the dial. I figure it may have just vibrated out of place as it's mounted directly above the filters. I check the cams an hour later. Flat 0. Same thing. Dial turned back. I reset the dial and I duct tape the fucker back into place. I'm feeling very confident that it cannot possibly defect now. I spoke too soon. I check the cams. Big fat 0 on the chlorine. I go down. I'm rather pissed at this point. Supervisor is on the phone. The tubes that channel the chlorine from the reserve to the chlorinator are laying on the ground. At this point, I figured maybe it was a maintenance guy screwing with it, but my supervisor reminded me that he and I were the only ones that have keys to open the dungeon door padlock. I duct tape everything that could possibly come loose. This pool was the epitome of this isn't in my job description. Everything goes well after the duct tape. The chlorine finally comes up. I lock up and leave, feeling rather accomplished. Everything goes well for about another week. I come in as usual. I unlock, set the dial, duct tape it, and get to cleaning. I check the cams. It's a steady free. Supervisor shows up to fix the system with something a little bit more permanent than duct tape. Mandatory chem reading for his records. Chlorine is at 0. Storm down into the corridor. I flick the lights on. Supervisor is right behind me. Something's not right. The iron gate is open. The chain is on the ground. There is a trail of water leading over to the chlorinator. The dial is on 0. The tubes are on the ground. There is a child's doll floating in the chlorine reserve. Supervisor and I look at each other for a moment before quietly setting everything back up and removing the doll. I stay down there with him as he attaches everything. Throw the doll in the dumpster after I lock up for the night. The next day, the supervisor decides to stay at the pool the entire day and watch to see if anyone goes in to screw with the stuff. The chems hold steady. At about lunchtime, I hear a massive clang from the corridor. We rush down there. The door is open. The padlock is on the ground. The iron gate is open, and there is a doll sitting in front of it. The chlorinator is ripped off of the wall, laying on the ground. Nah. We lock up. We close the pool for the rest of the season for maintenance. The Drexel Evil dungeon pool also had a creepy elderly lady that would stare from her window down towards the pool. Not that she much concerned me with everything else going on, so on to the next. I was covering another pool in Pennsylvania. It has a nice high fence. It's a quiet area. I'm pretty short, so I'm not the most intimidating thing in the world, so high fences are a plus for me. There is a little kid swimming in the pool with his mother and grandfather. Mother goes to the bathroom, places kid on the lounge chair until she gets back. The grandfather is not paying attention. He's just swimming laps. The kid starts edging towards the side of the pool. My face went. His mother took off his life vest before she went to the bathroom. I stand up and start walking around calmly, keeping my eye on him. All of a sudden, he just bolts and dives into the pool. I go in after him, I grab him, and pull him up out of the water. Grandfather is suddenly aware of what's going on and rushes over. Grandfather asks, why would he do that? The kid isn't even shaking or upset, like most are when I have to pull them out. He just says, the little girl is going to teach me how to swim. The grandfather and I look at each other, silently acknowledging that we are the only people on the deck. I look the kid over. Mom is back out and freaking out. His toe is bleeding from it catching on the edge of the deck on the way in. There are red marks on his left wrist. The mother is unaware of his response about the little girl. I brush the red mark off as it coming from me grabbing him to haul him out. I know full well that I grabbed him around the waist and that mark was not me. I only worked at this pool on and off for about 3 weeks. Things would get misplaced all the time. There will be wet footprints on the deck in the morning when no one should have been in there. Hopping the fence is not unheard of, so that did not bother me so much. Looking back, that was probably one of the more tame pools. The next one isn't really as paranormal as it is just straight up creepy. I'm working at my favorite main pool. People like me there. I have no issues with any of the kids misbehaving. Occasionally, someone brings me lunch. This guy comes into the pool area. He does not sign in. I get up and grab the clipboard to bring it over to him. I ask him to sign in. I discover that he's one of those guys that wants to tell everyone his life story. Starts going on about his divorce and wife and whatnot. I try to be as polite as possible. He's got a pool pass, so I've got no reason to argue with him. He starts showing up at the pool more and more often. He likes to get in people's personal bubbles. He roughhouses with his sister's kids a lot. Her daughter is obviously freaked out by him. I'm talking to one of the other guards. He tells me that this guy never sticks around when he is guarding. Same story from another female guard. Mr. Creepy starts going out of his way to talk with me. I eventually explain to him that he cannot hover around my chair because I'm working. And he says, well, maybe we could go do something together when you're not working. He is easily in his mid-40s. I am 16 years old at the time. I explain to him these facts and ask that he refrain from making comments like that in the future. I end up having to throw him out of the pool area not 5 minutes later for dumping a soda on me and calling me a slut. Management bans him from the pool. A week later, he comes up to the pool fence and starts taunting me. I'm not in there, so you can't do anything. I just want you to know, I know where you live. You're gonna pay for what you did. I call management. They immediately serve him an eviction notice. As previously stated, I was very well liked at this pool by both patrons and management. So, aside from the creep at the pool, it was a pleasure to work at. Granted, the pump room was creepy, but that's the general theme with the pump rooms I've discovered. They are dank, dark holes that are filled with fumes and pipes that you have to climb over to get to valves, and if you're really lucky, they have great big drainage holes in the floor, which brings us to our next pool. I am now in my 4th year as a lifeguard, which is just this past summer. I am assigned to a rundown pool in the middle of what I can only describe as one of the most shitty apartment complexes I have ever set foot in. It's constantly being flushed with what is referred to as mustard algae. It turns the whole pool this green/yellow color. The pump room is, yep, you guessed it, a dark, decrepit hole. In the corner, there is a large hole cut in the floor that goes down about 5.5 feet. There is a large drain pipe at the bottom of that. I get to work on cleaning the pool up. I've seen this crap enough times to know how to handle it. I scrub down the sides, crank up the chlorine, and I shut off the pump. I turn all the levers to backwash, and then I flip the pump back on. Surprise, surprise, the pump room starts flooding despite the massive hole in the ground. I go in with a broom to try to keep the water from overflowing out onto the deck. I glance at the hole. There is a doll floating in the water. I turn off the pump, extract the doll, and just start cursing. A week later, a large group of small children come in, which, by the way, if you've never experienced what it feels like when there are 20+ kids under the age of 10 swarming towards you like a little bubble army covered in floaties, you don't know horror. They are swimming and playing. I am counting heads with each scan over. Suddenly there's an extra kid. I count again to be sure. Yep, definitely an extra kid. I spot her. It's this cute little girl, smiling and playing with the other kids. She must have come in after the main group while I was scanning. I glance around the deck just to check on everything. There is a doll on the chair. One of the bubble monsters must have picked it up out of the trash or something. I notice the extra girl staring at me. She tells me, "She's my dolly. You really should not have moved her." Kids are so creepy, man. The group starts packing up to leave. I go up to the parents and informed them that one of the kids had taken a doll from the dumpster. They asked which one, and I indicated that it was the little brunette in the blue floral bathing suit. We don't have any brunettes in our group. We didn't even see one in the pool. I turned back to point her out. She is gone. The doll is gone. I apologized to the parent. I got to check on the chemicals and everything after they leave. That doll is back in the hole. I have no idea how she got it back in there, seeing as the door was locked. Seriously though, I do not understand the whole doll thing at all.